Good, then we are on time, and as we are Swiss citizens, we will start on time. Well, warm welcome from my side. I hope everyone had a very good conference so far and is enjoying the atmosphere and interesting talks here in The Hague. In the next 20 minutes, we will tell you a bit more about our story, about Swisscom story with Cloud Foundry, and how we came to the magic number of today, over 35,000 containers that we are running in production. These are on one hand David Zimmerli, who is our lead product manager of cloud services, and myself supporting him on the technical and organizational stuff, also leading the cloud services. So David will give you a few introductory words about what Swisscom is, because not everyone in here may know. Who knows Swisscom?
Who doesn't?
Okay, we have one person there.
Yes, so let me quickly take it. I'm not going through all these points, don't worry about that. Swisscom is the biggest telecom provider in Switzerland. We have offerings for residential, SME, and major corporation customers, so to speak. I think we have a super strong brand. Every Swiss knows Swisscom, I think, even the smallest children. So I think we did a great job there, and we pride ourselves to be a technology leader in Switzerland, so we really also invest in upcoming technologies. Cloud was one of them. Now it's not so upcoming anymore, but it's still a big topic for us, of course. And I think the last one is really we are also investing heavily into startups in Switzerland. We play a role in this joint venture market, so to speak. Could you go to the next slide? Now you have the clicker. So, and as I said, with the cloud portfolio, or our cloud products, one of them is the application cloud, which is our Cloud Foundry product, so to speak. I guess many of you heard about it already. There were several talks already today, and one of the most famous one was 2 years ago in Basel, talking about our whole setup. Basically, what we have is we stretch our Cloud Foundry platform, so to speak, over 3 availability zones, over 2 data centers, so that we really have a high availability, or can guarantee a high availability. Maybe on top of that, we also offer persistent services like databases or message queue services, Elasticsearch, and so on. And it is, of course, a Cloud Foundry certified platform. I'm not going more into detail because there are other talks and more or better talks about it, more technically accurate ones. So maybe just quickly, we have 2 product models, so to speak. We have the application cloud public offering, which is really focusing or targeted at the individual developers and ISVs in Switzerland. So our focus market is Switzerland, maybe that's also important to say. And on the other side, we have the enterprise application cloud, which is a virtual private offering, which is really targeted at large corporations in Switzerland. I think our biggest market, and it's not a secret to say that in Switzerland, is of course the financial market, so banking, insurances, and so on are very important for us. Yes, maybe the main difference just between these 2 distributions is the enterprise or the VP model is a dedicated model, so you get your own Cloud Foundry installation, and the public is really a shared one where multiple customers are on the same tenant. That's it from the product and the company. So Lukas, you want to take it away?
So, as you have heard from David, we are the biggest telecom provider in Switzerland, and besides being the biggest telecom provider in Switzerland, we are also one of the biggest IT infrastructure provider in Switzerland, or the biggest. And as that, we run a huge outsourcing business where bank and insurance companies and other enterprises run their servers with our infrastructure, or we have housing for them. So early 2013-12, we already saw, hey, cloud is upcoming, we need to do something, we need to act also there and build a cloud in Switzerland to have an adequate offering to be there for their needs. So in 2014, we checked out, hey, what is on the market, what could we do? And back then, We were with Pivotal Labs back then, and comparing that to OpenShift, interestingly in 2014, and decided there to go with the open source version of Cloud Foundry, as this was the most adequate solution back then to go with. And ever since then, the journey was very, very intense with Cloud Foundry to the point where we are today. So then early 2015, as you all know, the birth of the Cloud Foundry Foundation was there, where the foundation was invented and the whole IP donated to the Cloud Foundry Foundation. And we are a gold member ever since, and also their certified provider ever since the certification is available. And then 2015, we launched a public offering that David explained before. And February 2017, we launched the enterprise offering, which included this dedicated offering for the enterprise customer, and also that we use internally as well. And ever since, we are maturing the platform. We are making also the transformation that Cloud Foundry is making with exchanging the components as they get exchanged upstream. And we have the service marketplace next to our Cloud Foundry offering that we are also evolving and updating, that we built by ourselves. So to mention here are highlights from our end. If we dig into this history, we have the honor to represent the gold member as board member in the board. So Stefan Massalt is currently that board member for Swisscom, which is for us very interesting to get those insights, what is really going on with the foundation, and also thanks at this point to, if there are some gold members in here who voted for us. We really do that job, like to do that job, and it's an honor for us to do that. And the other highlight was that we donated the donation of the multi-cloud CPI. That was roughly 2 years ago. That for us was a huge effort. Also, as Swisscom participating in such an open source ecosystem was very new. We had to convince a lot of lawyers and internal processes to make sure we can really commit that IP, and give back is for us something that was and is very important. And we had Konstantinos as a full-time committer over nearly 3 years, involved in various projects that gave us insights in really what is going on, where are the pain points, how is this pairing working out, what are the processes that we then could also adapt for our internal processes. This to cover the highlights. I mean, the road was not always as shiny as it looks now. Obviously, it was a bumpy road from time to time. I think there are 3 main areas of challenges. One is for sure culture.
My question, you guys from Swiss, do you see any road here?
What? Road?
You guys from Switzerland, do you see any road in here?
Yes. Here is the road.
I didn't see it because...
This is why the road is so bumpy, huh?
This is the road for it. Okay.
This is the road. Yeah, it's not a highway like you know it in the US, but it's like you can drive there with the car, an adequate car. Right? The other one is the technical challenges we faced, and last but not least also the challenges we faced with Cloud Foundry on the market. And David will tell you more about this now.
Okay. So in the area of culture, I think this picture is illustrating it quite well. What we experienced in the past and still experience in let's say major companies in Switzerland, that up here you very often have our the decision makers, and there's this fog. We have a lot of fog sometimes because we have a lot of lakes, you know, and they're the guys down here developing, they're building or whatever they do, and there is no visibility of what they do actually down there. And what we experienced a lot is that a lot of decisions are heavily infra driven. So IT is making the decision, they believe in it, or they from tradition we're building up infrastructure, we're running infrastructure, And our offering, Cloud Foundry offering, of course, was like a threat to them. And I mean, this is a bit drastic, I'd say, but they had the fear that we would automate away their jobs. And I think it's also, or what we then felt is that we really are on a mission here, that we have to go and be the missionaries in the market and tell people, hey, this is the right way to go ahead. Hey, developers, and focus on the developers, tell them there is a better way to do this in their daily life, right? But quite frankly, it was also quite a challenge internally with even to teach our sales guys to what does that mean actually, and how can you approach the customers and so on. So it was missionary internally to get people, but it was missionary outside in the market. Market is the right topic also here. What we experienced, and on one side, especially in the startup scene, that it was very easy to convince these customers and guys to use our application cloud. So we have quite a lot of developers on our platform on the public side, and we also have a couple of major enterprises in Switzerland, and their growth, and that was the growth we saw in the beginning, is really enormous. And we see that this model of Cloud Foundry in a big company who is using it as a strategic platform is really working. The problem we have right now, and we're very open about that, I think, and that's also what we hear all over here in this conference so far, is that it's very difficult to convince new customers, new enterprises, that this is the right way. And I think there are two reasons. I think the major reason is somewhere down here, but the other reason is that because this whole setup, or how we set it up with the stretch tenants and everything, we have quite a big resource footprint. Which means that we also have a lot of production costs, of course, which forces us to, not forces us, but needs us to ask for fixed costs per tenant, so to speak. And that's only a practical model if you, as a company, as an enterprise, decide that this is your strategic platform. It doesn't work to start small and grow into big for these big companies. And I think the even bigger issue we have right now in the market is clearly the Kubernetes. So everyone says it has to be Kubernetes inside, otherwise I'm not deciding for such a platform. And that's really, and it's clearly, currently it's not only the developers who make these decisions, it's mainly also other stakeholders in a company, and then of course you have to go towards Kubernetes. And then the last one, and I guess by now you can see that we're really into our mountains in Switzerland, and this is our favorite mountain. I don't know if you know it. It's the Matterhorn. So if we take the analogy here again, is the higher you get and the higher you climb up this mountain, the air gets thinner and thinner, and that's what we also experience. So our growth is enormous. It's scaling massively, and there are less and less people who have experiences with the issues we're facing right now. And that also forces more issues, of course, and also takes longer to fix those issues, and that can be an issue. What we also experienced heavily is that migrations are super hard. So if you exchange components within Cloud Foundry, or also all around platforms or whatever, it's very hard. And we did that. We had this experience. Yeah. And last but not least, it's very important that you can rely on your infrastructure as a service. If this is not stable, then you really have an issue. So from all of this, I think we learned a lot. Lukas, you want to?
Absolutely. So, and if we go to the lessons learned of that journey, I think on the very top is, hey, if you have the best developer experience, infrastructure people do not care about this. And this is also what you see at the conference today. Hey, here the developer experience is in the focus, and this is also how we have won some customer. But on the other side, if there are really users looking for how I can improve my infrastructure, then Kubernetes, Cloud Foundry is not the right tool, obviously. But I think, and we will get to this on the future state, how Cloud Foundry can play a big role here in the future, is we will see that. On the other side, we love Bosch. I mean, Bosch has been a tremendous key for us to manage. We manage over 15,000 VMs with 12 people roughly, which would not be possible without Bosch in my point of view. because it just allows you to such an easy lifecycle VM management as we have not seen before from another tool. That's just amazing. So we also use that for our persistent services that are next to our Cloud Foundry environment, and then this is just going smoothly with Bosch. On the very top right, then the open source Cloud Foundry is hard in a way because you will experience issue and don't have anyone to just call on the support line and say, hey, please fix it. You really have to dig into it and know the details and the bits and bytes to also debug. We had quite a journey on this until we were at this point. But operating stateful services and open source stateful services is even harder because in there is the state, and if you mess that up, then it gets even harder and more critical. And then on the bottom more, I mean, what I call a success that we have is the platforms and the installations we have of Cloud Foundry, they have really massive growth, and they were adapted strategically within the companies we are running them. And I think very important for that was that we built that community within those customers, or also internally. We are a big customers ourselves with the internal application cloud, that we built that community with a dedicated team that we call the Cloud Empowerment Team, that is taking care of the relation to all developers, is putting them together every other month, has these weekly hours to talk to them, these weekly office hours to talk to them and make sure their problems are really addressed sustainable, and they also choose a sustainable architecture so they run well on your platform. I think this is really key if you want to grow adoption on your Cloud Foundry installation. And further, it's building the customer integration. I will come to that in a second, and making developers' life easier, which you will also see in that slide here, is basically around the Cloud Foundry installation that we have built a lot of integrations that make the developer's life even easier than it is with just Cloud Foundry. So it's, for example, a self-service onboarding where via our SAP system, people can create the Cloud Foundry organization, and it just gets the relation to their cost center gets just created. And there is like the connectivity approval process in a sense of, so far when you have deployed your application and you need somehow connectivity to a backend system, which I guess in every company is still IP to IP firewall configuration somewhere in the backend. Here within the portal, our users can come and say, hey, I want to connect to this backend, put in the IP and the port, and this then does a request to the connectivity team, to the team managing the firewall and making sure they adjust the firewall. So it's a manual process still there, so it takes 2 days until it gets approved. But at least on our end, it's automated. And before it was a pain because they had to send around Excel lists which contained the target and the source IP port, and then someone had to map it. And here they really just put it in a portal, and it's a standardized format, and it just works and makes developers' life really easier because he doesn't need to care about that. Same with certificates. He can create technical user, and then, for example, a nice thing is also the Active Directory Federation service, where today a developer, he can just, if he wants to integrate a Swisscom login, he can just create a service that is available in the marketplace. So create a service instance there, bind this to his application, and he gets a key that he can put in his OAuth library, and then he has his authentication and authorization just developed without minutes. And before, it was a pain to get this key from the EIM team and then making sure you adapt that correctly. And then on the other side, also fine-grained cost management and fine-grained billing, so that the controlling guys can really, per organization and per cost center, get all the details of, hey, what was the consumption, how many service instances, and that. I mean, that's very important for an enterprise to have the transparency on the costs. So those integrations were also really key on that success. But the journey is not over yet. We are developing and developing and developing. Life goes on. Consumption needs to grow. I think one important slide here I'm aware that you cannot read the labels below. This is on purpose. So this is the distribution of the build packs deployed or used within our internal application cloud. And yeah, you could guess what the language is that is used the most. So on the very right here we have the Java build pack that is used. But over here we have Docker. So that means more than 20% just deploy Docker images on Cloud Foundry today, whatever it is. And on here, that's the static file build pack. So this is like a majority, or a decent bunch of the developers push stuff there, which really again also says here, hey, this is emerging technology, and yeah, we all know that Kubernetes is the future, and this is also where it brings us. The next step for us, and this is already checked today, so we launched a container service, which is a Kubernetes service based on PKS, Pivotal Container Service, where a customer can come and he can create his own Kubernetes clusters and scale that out, scale that in, all powered by the OS BAPI, which also thankfully comes out of the Cloud Foundry community and is a great tool that we use internally to expose our services. And that is getting great traction on the market. And I mean, we need to further grow our existing Cloud Foundry installation. And the third point here correlates with the first point. So we now have the base for our next generation infrastructure, as we call it. We have the stable Kubernetes service. And we are now researching how we can put Cloud Foundry also on top. I mean, you have seen various talks already today and in the keynote announcements, how we can really do that move to convince more customers of using Cloud Foundry. I think that we could greatly benefit there. And we are also doing some research on serverless integration, but here we are in a really early stage and figuring out what do customers really want, what problems do we really solve. You need to know the Swiss market is always behind, as a European market is behind, and the Swiss market is even more behind. So we are very, very early here on just checking out the field before we do huge investments at this point in time. So that would be already about it of what we do and how we did it and our lessons learned. If there are any questions, we will be open to answer them now. Also for some roads or so on the mountains. So feel free to ask a question now.
How often you are handling legacy applications to move to Cloud Foundry from your customers?
Hard question. I would say it's about, and you guys correct me here, I would say it's about 50-50-ish, really, that we have apps that are newly or migrated or newly written in a 12-factor way, and apps like also WebLogic apps that are just taken and lift and shifted to Cloud Foundry. I would say it's really 50-50. And on Kubernetes, it's even more. It's 90% lift and shift that we see there.
One more question? Wait a second.
Hi, I'm Marco.
Hi, Marco.
I'm curious, you have a lot of different customers, and you have a lot of different tenancy requirements, and you also have like 15,000 VMs. So I'm curious, like, how you handle tenancy, and how you handle the one large deployment, sets of deployments, one for every single customer.
Yes, this is really a challenge we didn't tackle a lot now in this talk. We as a service provider have obviously different challenges than if you just want to serve an internal company. And that's indeed a big challenge. So we, on infrastructure level, we have the own vCenters then, and really have them separated already on the network and infrastructure level, and have own BOSH deployments, so to speak, for all the customers then, which evolve out of that. So that means you have to update the whole stack, basically. And we do this now more and more in a regular cycle, that every other week we update our public environment. So pretty automated from the pipeline. And then once a month, with a lead time coming from the public environment, we update the enterprise environments. so that we know the things are, the new bytes and bits are already running stable. So we take them then to the enterprise environments. But yeah, it's indeed quite a process to have them all up there. But over the years, we could build quite a good automation on Concourse that is more or less a click to upgrade an environment once it's running stable on public.
There was a great talk this morning, I don't know if you saw it, from two of our colleagues, Fabio and Andrea, so maybe you see it then in the internet. They explain a lot of technical stuff, and it will be partially, it was also filmed. So they really explain, to go into the needy, greedy stuff, yeah.
Good. Then thank you, everyone. Otherwise, we are also here to catch up later and wish you a nice evening.